The Dodgeball podcast. Oh, this is going to be hard. Wait. Sorry, guys. This is not the Dodgeball podcast with Brett and Steve. Nope. It's just a Dodgeball podcast. But wait, why, you might ask? Well, in a nutshell, life got in the way for both of us, and it became increasingly difficult to coordinate all the moving pieces to create a quality episode. Plus, around that time, and based off the feedback we received from many individuals, even those outside of Dodgeball, it seemed like our mission of setting out to give a quick rundown on the world and community of Dodgeball as we knew it, for the non-Dodgeball enthusiast, meaning, somebody that never played a game in their life. Our mission to create a podcast for them was accomplished. So between figuring out when we could all collectively commit to produce another series of 6 to 10 episodes or another season, and also trying to figure out where to go even, we kind of just put it on the back burner, and life happened. Brett got married and then changed jobs. I completed my officer candidate school training, and it was good stuff, but I digress. So will the Dodgeball podcast with Brett and Steve be back? Well, I spoke to Brett a few months ago, and he did seem pretty open to the idea, so you never know. We'll find out. And I'm sure that the more people ask, the more it might accelerate our problem-solving skills, and we'll figure out how we can coordinate all the moving parts to make and produce quality episodes for you guys. If I were to guess or project, I would say probably around the time of the next Elite season, life willing, right? Till then, you're stuck with me. So what is going to make this podcast different exactly? Well, if you notice the length of the episode, this is not about the non-Dodgeball player anymore. Nay, this is about getting deep into the weeds and down the rabbit holes of Dodgeball. And believe me, they exist. From Pre-UDC, Pre-Elite, Pre-NDL, if some of you can even imagine going back that far, I want to go there. I also want to focus more on the individual players themselves versus an overall theme. So where the Dodgeball podcast with Brett and Steve may have focused on the type of ball used or what a professional player might have been, this is going to focus more on the story of the player, where they came from, how they came about Dodgeball, some of their highlights, some of the opposite of highlights, you name it. I want to see where the conversation goes. I'm going to do my best to stick to an overall theme, some questions here or there, but for the most part, I'm going to let this thing take its course. And so if you can hang with that, then you might just enjoy this podcast. If not, I highly recommend you check out the Golden State syndicated podcast with Mark Ackham and Vince Marchbanks. Checking out maybe the Book of Dodgeball from the man from Valhalla himself, David Tates. And, of course, always shameless plug, the Dodgeball podcast with Brett and Steve. Either way, if you're still listening, we're going to move on to my conversation with Erik Breadtruck Tillmans. Alrighty, so I'm here with Erik Breadtruck Tillmans, formerly from the LA team Gridlock, and an all-around legendary player and stellar guy. Erik, thanks for being on, man, and sorry it took about, 2 months to finally get this baby rolling.
Don't worry about it. Thanks for having me.
Oh, for sure, man. So, first question I have to ask, and I don't think I've ever asked this before, really, is where did Breadtruck come from?
Oh, it would have been from the game show network Dodgeball, Extreme Dodgeball TV show, where I had been cast in the first season, and then done practices, and I couldn't make one and didn't get to participate, and then cast in the second season and was going out of town for one of the days, and again it was a day of practice, and then couldn't participate. And on the third year, I had been watching all these people that I was a better Dodgeball player than I was watching them on TV, and I was a little frustrated. So I was like, I'll just act like a crazy person because it's a reality TV show, and that will get me on.
Ratings.
And so I was like, I'm gonna come up with a nickname and just kind of act the fool on TV. And I did, and then I heard it was from Charles Barkley's some audio book or something where he talked about when he used to play basketball as a kid, kids called him, they'd make beeping noises, and they'd call him a delivery truck or a bread truck because he was so big when he was backing up. And I don't know why, but for some reason I thought it was just a great like really weird nickname, and so I started using that on the game show. And then most of the people I played with knew me from before that, but I don't know if just because of the exposure of that or because it caught on, but it just stuck from there. And then it's like 10 years later, and you're like, oh yeah, it was an offhanded comment by Charles Barkley.
It's funny. It's become such a part of life. You're like, I don't know. It's just what it is. Like the end is Breadtruck.
Very.
Yeah, I feel like nicknames, like rarely do you get to choose it. Like it's just given to you at some point. Collectively, people just agree, I'm going to call this person Breadtruck or hometown in Rob's instance. And
yeah,
I don't know if it's a dodgeball thing, but it just seems like everybody that is someone, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but like if you are somebody, you have a nickname of some kind. It's just like a term of endearment, or just like you earn it, like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think there's like the descriptive ones too, where you're on a court and there's 20 strangers or something, and you just need to, like, oh, let's throw it Belushi. It's like, oh, it's probably the heavier guy with a, doesn't look so hot. Or, like, I think there's some of that too, where you just need a shorthand.
Yeah, I don't do that. So like I'm really low key. I don't yell very much. So I have that going against me. But when we're trying to like call a play, I'll just straight up point at the guy. I'm like, look, we're going to throw at this guy, just because the odds of him dodging a collective throw of 3 or 4 people, it doesn't matter. Like, we're coming for you. And surprisingly, it'll work out most of the time. But my favorite is like when I point at him, the guy's like, you can't do that. You can't just like give away who you're going to throw it to. Where's the suspense? But it works.
I mean, I think that gets into at some end, all the strategy in dodgeball has to be able to be executed by dodgeball players. Like, no offense to our friends and family, but you know what I mean? Where it's like, all right, we got to cut this down to the bare. How about we point at the guy? And then, yes, like everyone will actually get that. Because the more you try to do your codes or do, I don't know, try to run plays, it's like, I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are on board for it.
You have to all be bought in. You have to talk about it beforehand. You have to practice. Right. Like you have to treat it like legit playmaking, play calling.
Yeah. And then execute it when there's a bunch of adrenaline going on. Yeah.
That's why sometimes pointing just straight up works. Like,
right. That's what I think those work really well.
My favorite thing to do is like I'll point at somebody and just pray that the other 3 or 4 guys are going to throw with me, and I'll choose somebody else that's not even paying attention, because they're like, oh yeah, I'm totally safe. I don't have to do anything. And then like sometimes it works out really great, and sometimes I'll get caught and be like, well, I'm an idiot. Can't even follow my own direction, but oh well.
Yeah.
Speaking of so play calling, I tried adapting gridlocks when I was playing with you guys, or with Gridlock. Was it July? Was that pre?
I think did West Coast round 3?
Yeah, West Coast round 3.
Yeah.
I forgot who I was filling in for. I think it was Kale, or I was filling in for somebody. It was just awesome being able to play with them. And it sounded easy enough on paper. And like I know Kale explained it to me, and I told him, look, dude, just explain this to me like I'm a 3-year-old. Yeah. And he explained it to me like, okay, cool, I got this. And then I would totally not get it. Like, well, I guess I'll just stay in the corner now and absorb balls for you guys, or like, I'll be in the corner of shame for a little bit.
I'll tell you, the Gridlock throw codes, which work pretty well, we're definitely like from the beginning, like we're going to make it as simple as we can, because it's just hard to come up with anything. And then once we've got the simplest version of it down, slowly expand it, because there's just. I mean, I came up with most of it, and still on the fly, I had tons and tons of problems, because it's just, I don't know, if you don't practice a lot as a team, and we practiced a little, but not a lot,
right.
Any of that kind of coordination is hard, and then as you try to ramp up the difficulty, it's harder and harder.
For sure. Yeah, we back in the days of Rampage, it was like if 3 people on our side had balls, the play caller would be like, okay, 1, 2, and 3, and people that filled slots from left to right would be the ones that are throwing. So if I said, 1 and 3, that means the first person and then the third number or the third slot would be throwing. So like, okay, we know these 2 people are going to throw, and then I would say on 5, and so 5 would be like the opposite team from 1 to 6, left to right.
Right.
And like, talking about simplicity, for some reason that worked really well during like one of our tournaments that led up to the NDL.
Yeah.
And my God, do we sound like a bunch of nerds? Like, it was just like, we thought we were so hardcore and so cool and so like on the same page, and it just sounded like ridiculous. And it's such a weird feeling because we're just destroying teams like I guess like you normally would. I mean, if you play dodgeball long enough, you can roll into any tournament and just
you can get to
roll people.
Yeah.
And so like this wasn't really necessary, but it's good practice because we did utilize it or attempt to, I think, against like Rise and at the time Monsoon, which was our kind of rival from Arizona.
Yeah.
And I remember one time we were just like destroying these guys, and I was like, man, is this too much? Like, I look really good in this jersey. Like, we're all color coordinated. This is great. But these guys are just here to have fun. Like, half of them are probably drunk already, and they're just getting rolled by these guys that are calling out these crazy number plays. And
yeah,
it was a funny juxtaposition, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's always a little bit that in dodgeball. I mean, there's serious teams and there's fun teams, but I think it's rare that you get a whole tourney where everyone's on the same level. So,
yeah.
You know what I mean? You're going to be behind or ahead of somebody.
I wonder if there's going to be a day where, you know, the coaches are calling play, like there's going to be a coach first of all, and then there's going to be like play callers that are like signaling you what the call is going to be somehow, or there's going to be some kind of system where they can get that message across super fast.
Yeah, I honestly, because in all sports, the strategy is an important part of it, right? There are very few that are just physically driven. And then in dodgeball, you've got multiple balls, multiple people you're targeting, and in most tourneys, some sort of shot clock. Yeah, you've either got to have practice, and you also don't always know your lineup because you're losing people, you know? So either you're running set plays that you practice enough that you can just execute, which I kind of think is what Rise does a lot of the time, or you have enough players that are physically able to just, you know, take solo shots and knock people out, or like you don't have to scheme around another team because your guys are just all physically strong enough. And I'd say that's kind of Doom's method for a lot of it. But I think for a lot of the rest of the teams, yeah, you're going to need essentially someone not on the court calling in so that they have, because all they're doing then is just figuring out what's going on and what needs to happen. And you call the play in, because there's too many variables, I think, for people on the court to be doing it. It's not that no team is good without it, but I could definitely see that being the way that teams could step up.
Like another evolution in the setup?
Yeah. Or, I mean, it's hard to tell because right now with the rule set still all over the place, I think what may work really well in one tourney or one division just doesn't have the same effect in another. And because of that, I think you need, like in football, you can have the set of rules is out, and then it's like, all right, well then the West Coast offense comes and they all of a sudden it is defeating current defenses, and then they're like, all right, well we're going to figure out the cover two to figure out that sort of thing, and let's say switch to that, and like you get this like evolution because it's around one style of play. But with everyone having to travel and do different games and different styles and everything, I mean, good players will be good in any of those, but I don't think you'll have an evolution of strategy unless you're like forced to play the same way enough that you get some, kind of meta gaming inside of that.
It's a good point. And I think maybe Elite's come the closest so far.
Yeah. Like
NDL had a good run for what that's worth, but you're right.
Yeah.
I'm even thinking about this weekend's tournament coming up, the LA Classic, where it's like Elite, but I guess it's 3 different styles of balls, so that's going to change the dynamic entirely 3 times.
Right.
And it's like, well, for foam, just stay alive, because now everybody can throw. Everybody's a weapon, essentially. No sting, more or less the same. It's going to be, can we outcatch? And then good old 8.5 is, can we muscle our way through? Yeah. And if not, can we catch a way through? And then, oh, by the way, we just played 2 divisions prior, so let's see how fatigue gets in the mix.
I mean, I'm more part of everyone that's playing in that, but especially now the kind of arm strain I picture from switching. I mean, just doing 3 tourneys of any ball style, 3 like short tourneys even, is difficult. But yeah, that different. I mean, I don't know. I do all 3 of those balls very differently, and I cannot just switch that quickly between them anymore. And I don't know if I ever could. I think it'll also be interesting just to see. I'm sure there will be some no sting teams because it's LA that are very good no sting that, just don't know how to participate in the other styles.
That'd be fun to watch.
Yeah.
I feel like it's my revenge because I'm awful at foam and like okay at best at no sting.
Yeah.
And like watching like people would throw at me and I would be like, oh, I can catch this all day, any day. But it's not 8.5. It's going to curve or it's going to bank. Or somebody threw a shot at me, Dylan, at open gym last week, and like it completely passed my guard. I thought it was safe, and at the last thing, I was like, wait a minute, this is foam. It's going to like come back, isn't it? And sure enough, it like hit me in the butt, and I was like, God dang it, like.
Yeah, different game.
Balls do whatever the heck they want.
Yeah, both. Well, especially the little balls they don't have the same kind of weight, so they can really just kind of ping pong off you so much faster than the big ball. That's the one that gets me the most, where you can't trap it in the same way.
Yeah, you can't trap it, and then I think if you're used to trapping like that with 8.5, definitely not going to happen with foam. Like it's more of a hands game, or you have to just be just completely at the exact same time to trap it. But yeah, foam is something else. And then no sting, a little bit easier because it's got that give. But still, it's like it's so fun watching and so satisfying watching a foam player come to 8.5. It's like, welcome to my world now, man. Like the tides have turned. Like I finally have a chance.
Yeah, but, I mean, I especially as an older player, I really like the leveling that 8.5 does. We're just kind of it tamps down how hard people can throw, and it doesn't necessarily even reward all the big arms. You know what I mean? It's so much more angles and movement and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So speaking of such, back when you played, kind of want to go back to pre-NDL. When you guys played for Extreme Dodgeball, did you guys use the 8.5 inch back then? Yeah,
that was we had been playing for a couple. It was, I don't know, more than a year, maybe 2 years before the movie came out, and then after the movie, those guys at Game Show Network put together Extreme Dodgeball, and it was all. I mean, they basically, as far as I understood it, talked to Costanza for essentially like, hey, we need a rule set. We need to know how to put this together as a competitive game, and that's what we were playing in LA that whole time. And so 8.5 became the ball for Extreme Dodgeball, though then they added that I don't even know how big it would have been, one of those 20 or 30 inch balls, like the big ball.
Oh yeah, because they had all the weird they
had different
standing antics, and let's just pretend this is not real dodgeball and have fun.
Yeah, well, that was the first 2 seasons were just you get hit and you make catches, like kind of regular dodgeball, but the teams were goofy. They were like a team of midgets against a team of it was jockeys and like mimes and accountants, like kind of silly based teams. Second season was the same, but like a little more serious, where it was like, oh, these are a group of security guards, and these guys are like Navy SEALs, like a slightly more serious. And then the third season, they tried to create a point-based game where like hits were worth a certain amount and catches were a certain amount, and then once you knocked a team out, they all came back in. So it really changed. It just really screwed with the game. Frankly, it was a pretty bizarre way to play dodgeball.
It doesn't really sound like.
Sorry, go ahead. But it was always that 8.5 ball. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I would play dodgeball, people were like, "Oh man, you guys are playing dodgeball just like it's on TV." Or do you watch that show? I'm like, "Oh, what? It's on TV? Like I'm really good, therefore I can be on TV like tomorrow. Like get me on there."
Yeah.
Just that mentality that we all had back in the day, and watching I guess I don't even want to call it like the de-evolution of dodgeball, because it wasn't really a thing back then, but just seeing like mimes against the Chicago police or whatever have you, I was like, oh dang it, like that just set us back like 5 more years, even though we're not really going anywhere anyway. We're still like, oh, you play dodgeball just like the movie, and like, oh, one day we'll get serious.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you, it was interesting because at times, I would say, I remember at least in the first season, each team had at least 1 or 2 like players that played with us regularly that were pretty good. And especially that second season, I remember it being like fairly filled out with good enough players. Like you had good games there and everything. And that third season, it was everyone could play pretty well. The problem was, you dress it up with all the cartoony stuff, and it doesn't matter what the games are like, Yeah,
at that point, it's just a novelty to most people, and they're like, oh, go team mimes and whatnot.
Yeah.
Do you remember anybody from there? Because I think the only person I think is left is Jake Mason and David Benedetto. I think they're a part of that.
I don't think Jake was, unless if I'm mistaken. I'm sorry, Jake, but because it would have been like people that still play. I mean, Costanza was there. I was there. I mean, from on the show.
Was Erik Audet part of that?
What's that?
Group? Erik Audet?
He was never on the show. I mean, he played in that. Actually, I think he might have started right about when that was over. It's hard to remember, honestly, because it's like probably 12 years ago. 11, 12 years ago. Back. Benedetto and I were the like when I stopped playing, I think we're the only two that were like still regularly doing tourneys that played back then. That played on the game show, I should say. There were other people, especially in the LA scene, that played then and still play now, but just never were cast.
Gotcha. And so you said that prior to the TV show, this was LA Dodgeball Society that had existed a couple of years prior to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So was that like 2002, 2003-ish?
Definitely 2002 or 3. I'm not sure. I would have guessed early 2003, but it might be late 2002. Yeah, and I was like literally just like poor and was looking for something to do on the weekend and was like on Craigslist, like free things happening this weekend. And there was some ad for it, and I showed up, and it happened to be the first week that Michael did anything for it. But it was very like just kind of small, like rec center gym. But it was so before the movie, before the TV show, any of that. So it was pretty niche.
I'll say usually it's you have some like outcroppings of leagues and organizations like that were there just prior to the movie, but not within a couple of years or so.
Right.
That's crazy. I wonder so Costanza founded LA Dodgeball Society.
Yeah.
I wonder what got into his mind, like, hey, we should start a dodgeball league, or we should definitely play dodgeball. Like, even at that point, it was such a random sport to just start up. I wonder what motivated him to do so. Probably have to reach out to him and find out.
Yeah, that's definitely a Costanza question. I mean, I know he really always enjoyed dodgeball, but I don't know, considering the amount of time he's spent like running it and doing it, then he must have some vested interest in where the sport goes, but that's really on him. I haven't really kept up with the WDS leagues as much since I stopped playing No Sting, so I don't know where all that's going and what's happening. It seems like every day I look up and there's some new organization putting something together, and I have tried to step away from that a little.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, especially back in the day when and this is, I don't know if this will surprise you. Do you remember Mark Murphy from the National Dodgeball Association, the NDA?
Yeah.
So like he planted the podcast seed for me 11 years ago, like literally. He and this is what I was gonna say, but it might sound weird. He shared a recorded interview of you because he was trying to find like the all-stars, and this is when Pinch was a thing, and so
he put together this Pinch team with me and a couple of the guys from Temecula and Seabass, if I remember right.
Yeah, Seabass.
Sebastian Scotty.
So were you guys part of? Were you part of the guys who would play in arena football leagues or arena football games?
Yeah, we played in a bunch of arena football. It'd be like halftime or
awesome.
Whatever shows. Those were pretty fun.
So what was that like? I mean, because the pictures he showed me, or the pictures that were featured on his website, were like, you guys are playing in front of a crowd of people, like a legit stadium packed full of people, and you just see like dodgeball players. I'm like, how can we bring that to Tucson or to Arizona or just to the world?
Yeah, well, so here's cool is that? I mean, we've done it at like Staples Center, a lot of the arenas. I think it was, most of the times when I did it, and so this may be different now, was what I'd call more like the barnstorming era, where it kind of like you'd put together a team, or an organization would put together a team, and then you'd you're like, oh, there's a tournament in Bakersfield, and the finals for it are going to be at their Arena Football League halftime. And so you just kind of like get a group, go out and do that. And then 4 weeks later, be like, oh, hey, there's something happening in Portland. And there's, so you just kind of like travel and do these tourneys. And then aside from that, small sports markets, and notably Arena League football for us, they need free entertainment on those halftime shows. And so I think for them, it was this very small investment to get, all the teams were given like cheap tickets, so it'd pack a bunch of people into the stadium. It'd give them something to show at halftime. I think it was kind of beneficial all around for that. And that's not going to work for something like the Lakers, where they're like, yeah, people will pay to be the halftime show for us.
Right.
But if it was, I think Dodgeball could find a home there by finding a sport. And I thought Arena League football was a good one just because it's obviously not super similar, but you could see the audience for one being interested in the other. But I can't off the top of my head think of another one. But I think that's what you need to do. You need to have that audience already there and then expose them. I think there's been too much comedy in the water right now for it to be taken seriously. The closest you get is I guess like the trampoline dodgeball, because that's actually on ESPN. But even that, it's like slam ball. It's like on trampolines. I don't know if that's I think it will be as serious as slam ball was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I wonder how long that will last, because slam ball was like 2 seasons tops, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I just listened to a podcast by the guy who founded slam ball, and it's found a new life in China because they're real into 3-on-3 basketball, I guess. And so he just signed this big contract to reintroduce slam ball in China. But yes, it's been on the shelf for 7 years.
Well, I would say we could always outsource dodgeball to other countries, but it would seem dodgeball's bigger in other countries than here anyway. So it's just...
Yeah, well, and then you get into the, if I show our style of dodgeball in Japan, aren't they going to be like, oh no, we play 3-on-3 with 3 people behind the court. Yep. You take it to another. That's part of that. There's no paradigm for how dodgeball is played. There's no unified rule set. So it gets into that little bit of I can turn on cricket and be like, oh, I kind of get what's a good play because I kind of know cricket. But since it's not something I grew up with, I can't appreciate it. Because I don't know the rules. And I think there's a lot of that in dodgeball. You show up to someone else's dodgeball game, and you've never been to their league before, and you're like, why are they trying to shoot baskets? Or why aren't people sniping? And it's just oh, well, basket brings the whole team in, and all balls off of a block are dead. So sniping someone without even getting, nicked by a block is really hard. And you're just oh, well, that's a very, very different game than how we play. And then internationally, I think it's just, you're farther away, so the rules get more and more different.
I like hearing parents and spectators come in to watch a tournament or a league, and they get into it and they're all excited, and then for some reason, to the untrained eye, it looks like so-and-so got hit. And they're like, why is that person not out? It hit them. And well, actually, it hit a player that was already dead, and therefore bounced off this player, or hit a ball, which was labeled dead, and blah, blah, I totally see even for them it would be hard to get into just a simple league game or a simple local tournament, because you expect simple rules that ball hit that person, therefore they're out, and that's it. There's no.
And it kills me because my favorite is small court, small team, 6-ball, 8-5, 6-on-6, 8.5 games. But I've been a part of a lot of trying to film dodgeball, trying to sell dodgeball, trying to figure out how to present dodgeball as a medium sort of thing, and I don't see it working with 6 balls for a lot of the reason you're saying, where it's just every ball has all this even the most simplified rule sets where it's first contact goes through, where if you block it's dead, or if it bounces off someone it's dead. Even with that, it's a lot to ask an audience member to follow, and we're people that play it all the time, and I'll sit down and watch a game and not catch stuff. You have to turn to someone and be like, oh, how'd Bob get out? How'd you, what happened there?
How's half the team walking out right now? What happened?
Right. And so, yeah, there's an element of that. I think that if the rule set allows for that kind of chaos to have high impact plays, like players getting out, then you have to figure out a better way to deliver it. And that could be you don't show it live, like so you can edit it up like they do for a lot of the Dodgeball TV shows, or you could do it like boxing, where it's shorter games or shorter matches, where in between you can do slow-mo replays of the better plays, like kind of like the better punches in boxing. Like you got to break it down in some way for an observer to watch it and appreciate it. And I think that's the biggest problem Dodgeball is going for, where every other sport has like a ball and you all focus on it. So you have the least educated person can still watch that ball and roughly follow the action. And in Dodgeball, like even that low rung is out. And so until you get into the 1-on-1 or 2-on-2, people don't have a good firm grasp of what's going on in the game. And I don't think it makes it very accessible.
No, that they also don't like connect to any particular player, because like teams crop up out of nowhere, and so like you said, when it gets down to that 1-on-1 or that 3 versus 1, and all of a sudden you're rooting for the underdog because he or she dodged 3 or 4 different barrages, and you're like, yeah, go this person, you're awesome, this is great, and you get really excited for a second, and then who knows until the next time that happens. And some games are over in as under like 15 seconds. I think Team Evil is one of those teams that broke the record, unfortunately, against Doom. We like just ate crap before like the 20-second mark. And then
I've seen that clip. Yeah.
I cannot. There are certain clips that just will not go away, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then, there's some games that take a little bit longer, but they don't have. Some of them just don't have that drama. You're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Rise is playing against Doom. I'll come back in like 20 minutes when something cool happens. When it's like Alan against Payan, that'll be cool to watch. Right. Like, wake me when it happens.
I mean, I'll tell you, that's one of the things that I think Elite has done something at least interesting with. Like, I don't participate in those one-on-one things there. I never did participate in those one-on-one games.
Oh, the showdowns?
Yeah, and I don't, because I don't particularly like it, but what I do like is that Mark's trying something different, and that it does draw a crowd, because I think it's different, and some people really like it, and it doesn't all have to be for me for it to be good for the sport. Like I said, like I like playing a style of the game that I think is ultimately unfilmable, and I don't know if it can ever be digested as like an Olympic sport, like how people want it to be. So I think we need to try new things, and I think it's really great that he's kind of figured out a new way to package up Dodgeball and present it to people.
Or at least show like a who's who, because some one-on-one matchups you can only dream about. They'll never happen, or the chances of them happening are very rare. But like if you find out, I don't know, Vince is going up against Ketchum, I want to see that. Yeah, and I would love to watch 100%. Replays, because all the angles are going to be there for me.
Right.
But that's like Elite players wanting to see Elite players play against each other. But were you part of the NDL's pro team, pro season?
I was very against Ed Prentice very early on. And I really didn't like how he structured his, like, quote unquote pro teams, where it was just, I didn't like a lot about how they set everything up there, and I especially found him to be very shady for a host of reasons. And so no, I was not interested in that. Like every year they were, I mean, I'm not gonna say it was like it wasn't like banging down my door to get me to play or anything like that, but like every year I was definitely the caliber of player then that could have been on one of the pro teams, and was just, I did not have an interest.
That's fair. I mentioned that because the second season when did you go to any of the NDL events then? Yeah,
so that's where, I mean, that's how I know him. I'm not talking out of hand. We went to many of those, and I just, had varying degrees of success, like won a couple, but had so many negative experiences there, both with the games and just kind of how it was just all so short-sighted. It was just always chasing a nickel and giving up $1 in the future kind of thing, where it seemed like his business idea was that he just felt real scammy. all the time. And that, to me, you can't, if that's the basis of your organization, you've got a real problem. And it felt like that's where he had his hooks in a good thing, and he figured that out. But then as far as how he decided to execute and expand and interact with the players was just exploitative, and I don't know, it's kind of gross, you know?
Yeah, not to get too into it, but like he definitely the approach that he had, where shutting other people out and saying we're the only show in town and you can't go do this without our permission, he was just not in a position to do that. If he had waited 10, 15 years and actually built the organization, sure, maybe, but he really it's funny because he would use this analogy where like you don't come in to somebody's house and sit at the head of the table if you're a guest. I was like, well, look in the mirror, dude. Like, that's exactly what you did. And, well, we all know how that turned out. But I bring that up because we, in the second season, or the second DWC, we played in that warehouse with the AstroTurf for the first day, till I realized that was a terrible idea.
I was injured on that one, but I heard all the stories when everyone came back.
It was the killing field for knees. Right. It was so bad. And, like, thank God I walked away from that one. When they got over that, though, Sunday, like professional season day, they had a pretty legit attempt to make it look like a well-presented, packaged professional season. So they kind of did what you were talking about. Like they pre-recorded everything, as you know. Yeah. And then they had like I don't know what the word is. Maybe you do actually because of your background, but like ESPN quality cameras and camera crew and the boom mics and all that good stuff. And I was like, oh wow, this is legit. Like this is really going to happen. We're going to have a really awesome, well-packaged program, and it's going to be so fun to watch and XYZ. And like even then, and this is not knocking DNDL at all. It's just like you can have the best, most professional setup, but because you can't even see some of the balls that are flying, because you can't trace 5 or 6 of these things taking place, it's a lot of it's standing around, and then somebody walks to the queue. Standing around, somebody walks to the queue. Like it's just really hard to capture overall.
It is, and I did one. I mean, I did the game show on TV. Had a whole lot of cameras. They did a special for the movie for MTV where it was like Ben Stiller and Vince Vaughn, and they had 4 teams that were, it's like a punk team and a hip hop team and I don't even remember the other 2. I bring it up though because they had it was like 2 cameras on cranes, 2 on either like back lines, and like 2 or 3 wild cams, which is like the guy holding the camera walking around. Right. Like they had coverage. It was still just, it was a garbage product. It's so well, this is the story I usually tell about at this point when I'm telling someone else about how hard it is to film Dodgeball. Is I watched this documentary once, and I can't find it now, but it was about how when the NFL started, that they're essentially like, hey, at the time, it was like kind of this regional game from the South, and they're like, well, how do we like film this thing? It's like rugby, or how do we film it? How do we show this on TV as an event? Because like what's really important is all this play on the line. And they had this guy come in who basically knew TV, and he was like, no, we're gonna frame wide at the start, like you see everyone line up, and then we're gonna go tight on the quarterback because he's the hero. We're gonna do then we're gonna show him under pressure. He then throws the ball, and we swap cameras to like the guy trying to catch it, and like the battle out on the island out there as this kind of like narrative. It's like this man against these forces sort of thing, which is why football's popular now, because it's this great little story that repeats over and over again, right? But the physical game of football, it's about line play, it's about coverages, it's about all these things that the way you watch football on TV doesn't show any of it. Unless you've got that all 22 camera that like the NFL Network lets you see, you're not seeing the game, you're seeing a very entertaining way to see things happening in the game. You know what I mean? And that's what Dodgeball's never figured out. It's still always trying to have like, I'll just put a camera on the roof and point it straight down, and like it's so far away you don't get any of the kind of like punchy action on the ground. And if you're down on the ground, I can't see anything. And like at some point someone will figure out how to film it right, maybe. But it kind of gets back to what I was saying. You get 6 balls and 12 guys. It's
good luck.
It's a big ask. Yeah. It just, I mean, like football's more guys than that, but at least there's one ball. And like I said, they take these shortcuts for what they actually play, like what they actually film versus what's actually happening.
That's really interesting that you mentioned the quarterback as like the hero, because that, I think, at least in my experience, like we're trained to watch the quarterback. The quarterback is the leader. He's the one that's executing all the plays. He's the hero in every single football movie. It's always like the quarterback that has issues and blah, 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 overcomes them and becomes saves the day. He's always the one that runs the last touchdown in the end zone. And even watching like a live game, like my eyes they're just naturally trained to watch what the quarterback does. Doesn't matter where I'm sitting in the stadium. It's always about him doing the first play that's going to kick off the rest of the action. That's pretty crazy. I wonder like how would you even begin to set that up with dodgeball and film, but that's a really good point.
I think it gets into that. I still always think it's going to have to be a ball reduction that you play. Yeah, maybe
slow it down.
I mean, like one of my favorites to watch is the Japanese style where it's 3-on-3 with a single ball, and then there's also like 3 guys that play behind your team on either, like one guy on either sideline and one guy behind. If that makes sense? Like my players play, if we're playing each other, my guys play behind you and your guys play behind me. So it's 3 on the court and then 3 behind the other team.
Yep, so I don't have to necessarily go for you. I can throw it over your head, hit my guy, and we can kind of tag team you, so to speak.
Yeah, like and anyone that played any of the, like the Nintendo dodgeball games for a long time were always based around the Japanese style of it. But what's nice, it's one ball, and there's 3 guys out there. And so you can follow the ball, and then you're very quickly getting into situations where it's 1 or 2 guys on a team, so that you can focus a little bit more. I don't know. I've talked to some people about it, and I think unless you have the right court for it, where the ball stays in play, and unless you have the right kind of countdown to keep that ball and throw moving, it could stall out. But I think the right rule set with that kind of setup could be very filmable. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's a good point. It'll be interesting to see what happens 5 years from now, where we're at.
Very.
I'm at least happy to see UDC on ESPN, whether it's 3.5, the internet. Like I commented on a thread. I remember watching, and I kid you not, 2009. I was watching the 2007 Yo-Yo Championships on ESPN2.
Yeah.
And like it wasn't a primetime slot for television, but I was just like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way that dodgeball cannot fill at least this spot on Saturday night or Friday, whatever night it was. It was just like, come on. But
yeah, I mean that's the hard, like for everyone that I love dodgeball, but you go to, like, I've been to like a AAA rodeo, like not even a real rodeo, like you know what I mean, like a down the pecking order rodeo, and there's 30 times the amount of people in that than have ever been at any dodgeball event I've ever seen. And there are now some larger dodgeball tournaments that are getting like a decent enough turnout, like some of these WDF or whatever, like the national type things. Mm-hmm. Seem to be having like a decent enough crowd, and it sounded like they had some like okay ones in some of the events in Australia. But you hold it up against sports that I think dodgeballers would roll their eyes at. Maybe not the stake of, maybe not yo-yo, but like down the pecking order a bit. And there needs to be some realistic thought there too about how, like, we're into this, but where does it stack up with, like, you know, Joe Sixpack? What is it? What's the
Joe Sixpack? Yeah.
Joe Sixpack, the normal man.
I was thinking Joe the plumber, but I prefer Joe Sixpack.
Yes, same. Yeah, what a normal person, how a normal person views the game, and that's that battle of like that. We've got there's a lot of ground to make up for all these comedy versions of dodgeball that have been presented. For sure, and like even compared to football, baseball, like dodgeball's been around for, I guess, 15, 16 years if we use Costanza as like patient zero, like that's where it all began, at least in the States. Yeah. 15, 17 years versus the NFL's, I couldn't even tell you, 50, 60. Yeah. And that one's even the flip side of that is you look at the top 3 sports in America in 1900. I remember reading something about this, and it was horse racing, boxing, and baseball. And then it's like 50 years later, horse racing and Horse racing is barely being followed. Boxing still important. 50 years after that, both horse racing and boxing are barely there at all. Football really comes up in the 60s, so it's like 50 years old. Like, things can change. Things can change very fast. You can go from a niche sport. I just listened to this podcast and it was talking about food, where they were like, before the 80s, like sushi, like no one was having sushi, and they were saying before I feel like it was like the 70s, like yogurt was this niche food that only Greek people ate. And then it was just like, yeah, but like things change. Like it can change very big, and like we don't even think of yogurt as a exotic or ethnic food. It's just like a staple that you have with breakfast, sort of thing.
Yeah, just something pompous people eat after yoga.
Yeah, and so and then that can happen with a lot of things, with sports, with TV, with movies. Like, we see all that stuff change, but there's reasons it happens, and it's because industrious people get behind it, figure out how to package it, and figure out how to get it in a lot of people's hands, and that's the where dodgeball still has a lot of ground to make.
For sure. I wanted to go back to Gridlock. That was actually gonna be one of my first questions, but kind of veered off. But not like that's an issue. Why Gridlock? Why the jerseys? And what is with the Raptor or T-Rex?
Oh, Grimlock.
Grimlock.
Grimlock, the mascot of Gridlock.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I was surprised that so many people don't. They're just like, who is that? Yeah, they think he's some sort of robotic dragon, which is, I don't know if that's better or worse than a robotic dinosaur, but no, Gridlock was just like cool. After the first, there was like Mark's very first elite tourney. It was like the Elite Invitational.
The Elite Eight?
Yeah, the Elite Eight. Like, a bunch of us had kind of been on teams that we weren't. Just kind of like that one was a little pieced together team-wise. Like, there were some established teams, but there were a lot of us that were just kind of like, oh, that'd be fun, and got together. And then, yeah, shortly after that, me and the Harrells had all wanted to play together and kind of been...
That's half a team right there. Just
was it?
I was gonna say the Harrells are half a team right there. Like, you got your work cut out.
That was so in the big big WDS and LADS leagues, you'd have these 20-person teams, and so I had captained some teams and they had captained some, and it was always this like, oh, we need an extra guy, or we need an extra guy, and it just never worked as far as me playing with them or them playing with me. And we had done like a little bit here or there, but nothing that serious. And then after that first 8-5 tourney, yeah, I approached them and was like, yeah, why don't we get like the three of you, me, at the time Erik Radke, and like use that as a core of a team and like bring some guys in, and yeah, had a bunch of success right away, and really had a blast with it. The jerseys, I designed them with input from the whole group, where I was like, well, should we do this? Should we do this? What color should we use? Went through a bunch of different names, and then I don't remember. I don't remember how Gridlock was the one that caught on, but yeah, there was some post that was like, yeah, we could be Gridlock and our mascot would be Grimlock, and then there may have even been another pun in it, but it just kind of took off from there. I found a factory in China that would make us jerseys how I wanted them, with the collar and everything, and then yeah, so I just stopped playing after 5 years with them. I don't know, a lot of fun.
Why the collars? And I think you guys have like arguably the best jersey out there. It's just so unique, so cool looking.
Oh, thanks. So I actually started going through other sport. The initial idea that I had was, let's find another sport that like has commercial jerseys for sale, and then like essentially like, hey, let's say we didn't all know the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? So I'd be like, oh, let's get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers jerseys. We'll just put our name on it, and that'll be our dodgeball team. Let's find, like the Liverpool Gamecocks, and we could just get pre-made Gamecock jerseys, or, like something like that. Let's find a team out there for some other sport, and then we'll just get our jerseys made, so we don't have to go through all this like rigmarole of like designing and doing all this stuff. In looking at that, though, I started looking at a bunch of different sports that had jerseys, and I wanted to find something that was good for dodgeball, though, because up to that point, you'd have teams playing in like basketball-style jerseys or like a lot of T-shirts, just things that weren't great for not getting hit and then still being. They need to be loose enough that you have a lot of movement, like kind of baseball style. You want to be able to throw and do whatever you want, but you also want them to be pretty trim. You don't want to get nicked with anything. And I eventually ran across rugby jerseys, which are set up exactly for that, where you don't want to get tackled, but you don't have. If football jerseys would be perfect, except they're built for
shoulder pads and
having all the gear under it. And so rugby jerseys are made to be tight to the body, but then also loose around the shoulders. And then they stylistically, and I don't know the origins of rugby collars. That's a whole. I never went down that rabbit hole, but they have a whole bunch of different collars, and so in some of the early designs, I was like, yeah, we should do rugby jerseys, and then I showed the collars, and the guys really liked the collars, and then we decided to not use an existing rugby, like team somewhere, to just design our own. So, and then I did that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know, rugby is a classy sport, therefore colors, even though they're beating the crap out of each other. So.
Yeah, maybe just give it a little bit of respectability while you're punching another guy in the mud.
Yeah, it's all good if you got a collar. It's totally a gentleman's sport at that point. So you said you're retired, but you still play recreationally. And we kind of talked about this when we almost had our own like side podcast. The first time we were.
I just trying to stave off like getting too fat. Like there's somewhere. Right around 30, there's like your metabolism just starts going to crap, and you can't eat what you used to, and like you just like change. And I probably became a better dodgeball player in my early 30s than I was around 30, because you're different. And then you get into your mid 30s and late 30s, and the injuries start just like really not healing up, and you really have to. I was never one to stay in great condition, and you have to spend a lot more time to even stay in okay condition. And then, around 40, it's just like every tourney, there's some new, 20-year-old baseball washout starting pitchers throwing an 8-5 ball at your head, and you're slower and dumber. And like, it just gets where you're just like, you know what, this is still great and I love it, but I'd like to play once a week Wednesday night, and for a couple hours, not 8 hours, for 2 hours. And at that, I can still play very well and be very competitive and not like come home like ground up meat. Yeah,
like you said, how much time do you want to spend recovering the rest of the weekend?
I was starting to spend a lot of time recovering and just like really having to. And I have 3 small kids now, and that was one of the big ones where I would come home, I'd leave on a Saturday and just be like, hey honey, watch 3 kids all day, and then I'd come home that night and just like, couldn't. Just kind of have to like lay down a lot, do a lot of icing. I took a decent amount of painkillers just to kind of like continue to be functional. And then the next day and the next couple days after it would be like, no, I can't pick you up very well because my shoulder is garbage. Like, no, I can't do this because my back feels really bad. And then it's kind of like, well, why are you doing that? Because you could snipe some guy in Yatsuvo, like. Like, it just there's got to be some point where it's like, well, you're not going to play dodgeball forever, like at a competitive level, so step away when you still feel decent about how you were playing. And then, like I said, I can play one night a week and get everybody out that I want to and still be sore for a day afterwards, but like be functional,
right?
I'd still make every tournament. I'm still real sad. I always look and I'm like, oh, I could be doing that, but I just, you can't play forever. No one can.
It's like, can I do this, or do I really want to? Because you obviously don't do that for a reason, and it's just good to know that you're still out there playing. Like that's because I'm not too far behind you. I'm 34 myself, and I know that day's coming where it's just going to be like, this is not fun anymore. This hurts a lot more than it's supposed to or used to, and starting to slowly feel
it. You slide it. I gotta say, right around 34, 35, I had like a second coming where you get better. I mean, there really is. There's just like the years of play add up, and you may physically fall off 10%, but you're 30% smarter, kind of thing. If that, those are real numbers, but you know what I mean. Like, you can become a much more efficient player as long as your body doesn't just totally fall off a cliff.
Yeah, and so that's what you're saying. Like, you become more deliberate in your actions. Yeah. You're a little more conservative. You're not throwing every single ball possible. You're calculating, and you just, like you said, all that experience comes to, it just like finally matches your body, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, it just becomes like all your plays are high reward, low risk, and so like by doing that constantly, like it keeps narrowing your little your room for mistakes, but. Like just because you are slower, you can't make the same throw, you can't overpower people the same way, so it's a narrower thing you have to hit, but you're better and better at doing it. Just because like your timing is better, you don't get excited when the game is late in it. Like it's actually one of the things I really like now about playing Wednesday nights right now in LA. We've got a bunch of new 8-5 players, and it's just really fun to see them. Yeah, it'll be like a 2-on-1, and you can see they're young, and their like game suddenly changes, and they make big dumb mistakes, and they kind of like run around like crazy a little bit, and it makes me remember what it was like, when I was young and dumb and doing that same sort of thing. It's just really interesting to see it, from an old man's eyes watching it happen.
Yeah, there's a clip of us. I mean, Team Evil, like back in the day, 2006. We were playing against the makings of Rise at the time, and these are Serge and Tim, Jim, very very high caliber, strategic, great calculating players, right?
Yeah.
However, at the time, we all looked like a bunch of kids that had no idea what the hell we were doing.
Where this is going.
We just looked like a complete. Like I'm trying not to cuss, but a show. Like it was just bad, and it's just so funny because at the time we're like, oh, this is the best I've ever played. We're at the apex of dodgeball. This is serious business. This is super competitive, and now we're just like, I could take on the entire court by myself, watching these guys play the way they are, and it's hysterical. And that was, it's true. You get to relive that when a new person comes on, because like, haha, that guy's gonna get picked off for not looking, or he's gonna get blindsided. And I don't know about you, but like when I see that happening, I like. Kind of try to coach them through action. So like I'll see a perfect opportunity to light them up, but I won't. Instead, I'll like throw a nice lob so that way they can slowly pick up like, hey, I shouldn't leave myself exposed like this, or maybe go.
You're a nicer man than me.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get my outs. I just want to get outs. I just want to knock them off the court. Nice. I try to do a bit of like after the game, like, hey, like. I was able to get you there because you had 2 balls and threw them both, and then I ran you over. You should throw one and then back up and regroup because you're stronger and younger than me. Like,
so you offer a
there are things that
at least.
I don't think are easy to pick up, so you try to, pass it along. I'm not here to just get people out, but I don't know if any of it's absorbed by anybody, but I try.
I've had a few players come up to me in the past and like, oh man, Steve, thank you for all the advice you've ever given me. It's great, and I learned a lot from you. And that's always a good feeling. Like, oh, cool, I left a small little mark in a very small little niche world. It always feels good. Like it's just you want to pass off something.
Well, I think it feels world. A little more. Not that any of this is a waste of time, but like it does feel good that you're like, oh, at least I made some impact here with all those hours I put in.
Yep. Or you made somebody's day a little bit better, or you made them appreciate the game just a little bit more. Yeah. Kind of share that passion with them. So going back to like leaving your mark on, the younger, newer players, what advice would you give them? Like somebody that's brand new, he shows up to open gym, got rocked, got lit up, but is one of those rare few people that wants to come back. What advice would you give them, if any? Well,
I can tell you exactly what I usually do is that I've played long enough so that I've seen people of just about every skill set be good in one way or another. So if someone shows up and they're like they're an ex shortstop, and you can see it real fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so they're throwing real hard, but they're delivering everything right into the person's breadbasket, because that's where all their muscle memory is trying to hit someone from that distance about there. It's getting into that like oh, hey, like, you throw hard enough, you don't need to be up that far. Or like, hey, after you throw, try to stay squared up. Or like, if it's a tall guy, you do a lot of like, well, you need to watch your feet, because there's the whole thing where it's like, as you bend down, your knees go out. So everyone's going to throw below your knees. So you need to work on being able to move your feet around without bending over. And like, just those like physical things that are a nice shortcut, like into the game. Because I think it's really hard, like, unless there are people that come up with all the skills, and then it's really just like, hey, like, keep your head on a swivel, like, just, you'll pick it up, because the physical side will get you there. I'm always more worried about, you see people with kind of the, just like not that it's a bad thing. I think it's 99% of us, just like a limited skill set, and that can be very frustrating, where you show up and you're good at throwing, but you throw once and are out, game after game after game, where you should be good and aren't. Is just giving that little like, hey, like, don't throw from the middle, because you when you throw, you used to be a pitcher, so you're rolling your whole shoulder over, which basically means half the court can like underhand lob a ball into your leg. Yep, like, if you're gonna throw, pick one side, throw at people near you, and then do like a wide receiver shuffle back. Get your hands up when you can. Just like those little physical things that let them stay on the court a little more, and keep an eye on what's going on. Because I think you're right. Like, it can be so frustrating, and you see people that show up that should be good, and they're really bad, and then they don't. It doesn't come together, and you see, you're like, that guy's never coming back.
That's the worst. Because from when I ran Tucson Dodgeball as a league, you need people to come back. So it's like I had more incentive to try to coach people and try to get them to come back, and talk about strategy and just how you can stay alive just a little bit longer. And yeah, that's the worst. To see somebody get really excited at first and then transition to, I'm never coming back, this is rough, or I don't like it, or I didn't have fun, that just sucks.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, the time that reminds me the most, so 8.5 is what we started on in LA, played it for years, got up to like multiple 8.5 locations at one point even. And then after Pinch was introduced, the ceiling for how well people were playing just took off to this degree that new people would show up, they'd get hit by one, and we had a lot of like real serious Pinch players at that point. They'd get hit by one of those, like, all right, well, you could just see it in their face, like they didn't show up to box, and that's what was happening. They were just getting people really hit for real, and it tore all the leagues apart. I mean, that's where Stay Puft came out of all that, because you needed an alternative for people that wanted to play without having their fingers all chewed up and without having to worry about their retinas all the time, where it created such a high level for entry that it really killed it off. I mean, for a while, WDS was doing 8.5 leagues, and it'd be 3 teams of 5 and barely could field that, And it was like that for a couple of years, until Mark started doing the elite stuff again. 8.5 was, it's really on life support. It was just kind of a little group of us that always played, but there'd be 15 Stay Puft leagues with 10 20-person teams in each of them, and then one 8.5 league that was barely going. Did you
might be a bit of a stretch. So back in September of 2007, we had our first like independent dodgeball tournament in Tucson, and it was at the indoor roller hockey rink.
Okay.
And it was 8.5, and a team called Lads, LA Dodgeball Society, came down, and it was Costanza and I think Randy Duran.
Yeah, Randy Man.
And were you part of that posse by chance?
So I came out on some early trips. I'm not. The one I remember for Arizona was probably a little bit after that. It was one where there were like 2 Arizona groups having a tourney on the same day, and we went to the wrong one. We went to the one that like Sam was running.
Oh man.
And it was just us and a couple teams, and then later we ran into someone. They're like, "Oh yeah, there's a tourney with like 12 teams at this other place." What I would say is I traveled to a lot of tourneys with Costanza and a lot of them with Random Man, but unless you have more details than that from that one, I'm not sure.
It was called the Co-Ed Naked Dodgeball Tournament. $600 cash prize, but you would know, like the indoor roller hockey rink. You would know that. It was similar to like that one dude hosted, I think, in like Virginia, like the first like 10K tournament.
Yeah, I was out for that one.
Yeah, and I just funny because I was looking up clips of that.
Oh, I'm dressed up like I have like a mohawk.
Man, you look so different. It was crazy. I was like, holy crap, that's Erik. Like,
wow. Oh yeah, I've got like a black eye from a street fight from when we were out carousing. Like, I was not fighting; I just got punched. But yeah, it was fun. I watched that the other day. I found a link to it on an old list of like dodgeball links for clips. And yeah, it's crazy. It's just like me in a wife beater with a mohawk and a beard, and it's weird. I look like I'm moving around the same, but yeah, it's well, obviously I'm young. It was just, I don't know. It was very weird to watch.
Yeah, it's so funny watching a younger version of yourself play. You're like, what are you doing? Like,
yeah, I was throwing real hard. I like that a lot, but I don't know. Yeah, that was a fun tourney. I wish I could remember. And it's funny. I mean, you'd say like, oh, it was that indoor hockey one. Man, I've played on every hockey rink, roller rink. Like floor of the Staples Center, the parking lot outside the Staples Center. Garage, like underground parking garages and Los Gatos, like a muddy field outside of a school in Malaysia, like all of them. I played in all of them. So unfortunately, I don't remember it from just that. Though I feel like I would. Do you remember? I don't suppose you remember who else was with the group by any chance?
I don't, and that's the thing. It wasn't, and it's no offense to these people at all. Like, but the only people I remember were, like I said, Randa and Costanza. The other guys, I don't think I've seen in NDL. Definitely not Elite. There's a video though of like the highlights from that tournament, and it was really good video with what's it called? Welcome to the Jungle. And then YouTube's like, nah, you can't do that. So I put like this lame stock music, but the footage is there, and I can message that to you. Yeah, so I guess we can go on forever, but I'll close with that kind of the segue to this last question.
Sure.
What is your best dodgeball tournament / experience? Like, what's the one that, I'm sure countless do, but what would stand out the most? Like, you're like, this was the best dodgeball experience ever, like the pinnacle.
Or
what comes close, I guess.
I think that gets a little into like why you're out playing, because I couldn't tell you how many. Like tourneys I went in with a good team, we won the tournament, we got some, chintzy prizes or not at all, or got a free drink at the bar, and then left. Like those are, I don't know. I guess I had enough of those some of those stand out, I guess is what I'm saying, but I don't know if they'd be like the most interesting. I don't know. I would say, some of the most unique ones were when I've like traveled, I guess. We had that. I went for one of the Team USA trips where we played in, and I guess this is a good mix of, we won, which was great, but also it was such a cool like experience where we went to Hong Kong and we played in their local league, like their all-star team versus our traveling team. There was like a mix of USA and Canadian players, and we went, and it was like a new ball that we didn't know that well, but they had it in this indoor gym, and like their rules were different, their shagging was different, and they were good. And the first half we went down, probably like 10-2. We were just getting blown out. Switch over, and then won all the way back, so that with like 30 seconds left, we're tied, 12-12 or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers, but we got tied up like that. I had a couple good plays, and I had been having shoulder problems in that, so I was kind of inaccurate, but I had a couple good plays back to back, which was really nice. And then we did win the game to so we won, we got our little medals. But then it was this afterwards, we went to a bar with them, and we hadn't really known anyone, and it was one of these where it's like, oh yeah, it's not like Hong Kong is the most alien place on Earth, but it was we're just like, oh, it's the same dodgeball conversations, the same dodgeball people overseas. And then one of the coolest things I've ever seen, everyone was like, oh, when are the stats getting in? And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, oh, the games are all taped, and right after the games are over, they get sent to this person. They just pay to accumulate all the stats. And it's like a couple hours after the game, they all get posted, so you know how many like hits you have and catches you have, and like
that's cool.
The win percentage when you're on the court, like all this crazy stuff. And where it also opened my eyes a little bit, where it was like, oh hey, like what we're doing in LA and the US can be and has been surpassed. You know, it was a little bit of like, oh, this is like us, and then it was a little bit of like, it just opened my eyes to like how much future there could be, and it was like super in range. Like it did not have to be this like barnstorming, ticky-tack like comedy thing. That there were already people taking it seriously, and you could travel and go see them and have a fun time with them. You know, that's
cool. Yeah, you're right. It's always tournament and then after party, same people, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not bashing that experience at all. It's definitely got its own value, but some ones that like really stand out. So like the Salt Lake tournament, for example.
Yeah.
Mason behind the back. Okay, cool. What else is new? But like watching somebody else like relive that and experience that was great. Stats, that'd be really cool to see, and just kind of having an idea of what that would look like. Even now, like if that's an element that you can bring in, that's not new. That's not like groundbreaking. It's not going to cost a lot of money. It's something that could be not too far from the future. Like you said, it's within reach.
Yeah, it was. And one thing I forgot even, and they had refs that were just paid refs, where they were like, yeah. So in Hong Kong, it's largely Indonesians are kind of the immigrant worker there, right? Like for here, it'd be people from Central America, right? And they were just like, yeah, we just found some people, that were basically day labor type, like, like basically like nice, honest people. They didn't know anything about dodgeball. We brought them out. We started paying them to be refs. You just have to pay them an hourly, pay them to be refs. After a couple months, they were really good refs. They don't play dodgeball, so they never play favorites. They're just really good refs. They're brought out. They reffed all their games. Were super good at it. They took no lip. And it was just one of these where, like, again, where it's like, oh, that's super attainable. We could be doing that tomorrow. That's the future. That's what like real sports do. I don't know. It was very
charming. A little bit of money and time, and then boom, done deal.
Right.
Cool. Well, I mean, I would say maybe within the next 5-10 years, hopefully we'll at least get to that point. Maybe sooner. Maybe this conversation might nudge some people. Never know.
I think some of the drama with all these organizational entities needs to get figured out, and best of luck to everybody. But
right,
yeah,
we're in feudal Japan, and everybody's trying to be shogun right now. Still, after the last 10 years of the same thing. Yeah,
and I'm happy to just. Anyone that wants help on just doing things that are good for the game, I help out. But all of who's figuring what out, I hope it gets organized, because I think that's what it needs for everyone that's got these dreams about the dodgeball being international and being in the Olympics and being bigger. That's got to get settled first, and then I think it'll start moving forward.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for chatting with me. I mean, this has been pretty cool. I got to relive some things, and that's the whole point, is just trying to capture a lot of the memories that I think a lot of people that are relatively new, even within 5-6 years, still don't know what life was like pre-NDL, pre-elite.
I know. I was trying to explain the barnstorming to someone the other day, and it was hard. They were like, how did you find out about tourneys? And I was just like, it was like, pre-Facebook, where it's just like, I don't even remember.
Message boards.
Someone would just say they'd heard about a tournament, and we'd go there, Yep.
You'd go there and you just hope that it's a good turnout. You hope that it's still actually that day, and then I
remember going to them, and you'd be like, what kind of balls is it? You just show up, you're like, oh, what are these? Just be some sort of volleyball thing. You'd be like, all right, well,
whatever, let's do this.
Yep. And now we're diagramming plays on the computer and sharing with everybody.
Yeah, for better for worse, it's come a long way, and still has a lot further to go, but at least I was able to be a part of it and still kind of am, and hoping that this podcast can kind of help. I don't want to say bring appreciation for what it is, but it's just definitely a good way to look at things, and maybe learn some stuff from the past and whatnot. But
yeah.
But for me, it's I went to the Hall of Fame the Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, and I'm going through all these archives, and it was just a spur of the moment thing too. Like, it wasn't even like we were planning. We were just in Atlanta. It was free to military members, so like, cool, why not? And just seeing the changes in uniform, hearing the interviews, seeing like so and so's like suit that he wore, and it really reminded me of like the good old barnstorming days. It reminded me of like how far we've come, but how far we still have yet to go, because we're still in a lot of those phases where you have, even the NFL had infighting. They had organizations vying for like the ultimate seat. And so for me, it would be great to be able to record a lot of conversations and build out a timeline to kind of slowly start putting that in place, so that if and when the dodgeball world does wake up and move forward, we still have something that we were a part of. So very like League of Their Own, end of the movie type feel is what I'm going for.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really neat idea. I think, and I agree, because if I keep like, we'll have to get together so I can get you some of them. I've got like weird clips from, like I have like a full set of Extreme Dodgeball Season 3, for example.
Nice.
Like sitting on a drive somewhere. Like I've got a bunch of old weird clips of Dodgeball. I'm sure Costanza has more than I do, but that kind of stuff, it's just going to start getting lost. And I don't know. I mean, because I think there are people that would like to see and hear this stuff, but it's going to be, like you're saying, harder and harder. It's starting to fade away.
Yep, it's got to start somewhere, and hopefully this is just a small contribution to what will get people to like, oh yeah, no, I've got footage from my High 8 Sony cam of us playing dodgeball at the U of A, or I've got the old flyer from the NDL 2005 Dodgeball World Championship and Convention, or I've got footage here, or check out this YouTube link, or it's all out there. So I would just like to start consolidating it and getting it to one maybe central location, but just have it acknowledged and just see where it goes. But
you know what I just found about 2 weeks ago? I was cleaning out my dodgeball bag, my very nice core patch that you gave me at that Utah trip.
Nice.
I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, of course, dude. The Octacore patches, that is a staple of Tucson, of Team Evil, of Steve. Like, that's just... Yeah. Man, that is...
It was tucked in one of my pouches there. I had set it aside to, like, iron on or sew on at some point, and it had just been in there, and I pulled it out. I was like, I put it back in, but, awesome. I was very happy to have it.
It'll come out another day, and that's great. I love seeing... I'll still see people, like, wearing that stuff on the wristbands and, like, aw.
Yeah.
We're friends. That's so cool.
Definitely.
Awesome, man. Well, again, dude, I appreciate your time, and I can probably have to do this again at some point. Maybe we can do like a part 2, get further into the weeds.
Anything you need follow-up wise, or anything I can do to help, I'm happy to.
Awesome, man. Yeah, if you have any ideas for me as well, especially as we like release an episode and whatnot, just let me know. I'm down for suggestions and feedback and all the like. So.
Okay, sounds good, buddy.
All right, dude. Well, have a good night, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, you too. Talk to you soon.
Right, take care, man. Yep. So that was Erik Breadtruck Tillmans, and what a joy that was for me personally to relive much of the pre-UDC, pre-elite, even some of the pre-NDL, good old barnstorming days of dodgeball. If you can imagine a world without Facebook, maybe even without MySpace, that's more or less where dodgeball came from. And whether you're new to the sport or have been around for a while, it's just come a long way, period. Even from the last 2 years, dodgeball is definitely, I feel, on the right track. And when I look back at some of the harder struggles that we went through just to get to a tournament, and I come back from a 3-division tournament in LA where we had people coming in all the way from Minnesota to come play, it really does strike the gratitude chords there to just sit back and appreciate all that's come and gone within the last 10 to 12 years of us playing. Anyway, so in conclusion, I hope this gave you a good taste of what's to come. If you have any questions, any feedback, I am open to it. If you'd like to be on the podcast, I'd be more than happy to sit down and chat with you for, 30, 45 minutes, an hour, however long it takes. If you love dodgeball as much as I do, we can talk all day. So that being said, till next time, this is Steve out. Line. Sorry, Nick. Try to get through this, make this as painless as possible for the both of us.